G'day, legends. Jack D. Dingo here, and today we're diving headfirst into a mystery that'd make even the toughest croc in the billabong shiver in its scales. Forget the dusty legends of the red dirt, because the beastie we're hunting today lurks in the deep blue depths of our own backyard, Australia. I'm talking about the Megalodon, mate, that colossal shark they reckon vanished ages ago. But what if I told you it's still out there, cruising our waters, just waiting for the right moment to show its face? If you're keen on a ripper mystery and want to uncover the wildest secrets our continent holds, then hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because what's coming next will knock your socks off. We need you on this journey, so get subscribed to Outback Confessions now, before it's too late. Out where the desert kisses the sea, the silence stretches wide, and the very air holds its breath. Folks often jabber on about the land being ancient, but trust me, it's the ocean that truly carries the weight of eons. Beneath that shimmering turquoise off the Queensland coast, where the continental shelf plunges like a jagged scar into the earth, there's a depth that simply doesn't give back what it swallows. And in that crushing abyss, some whisper, something truly ancient still stirs, a shadow from a time when giants ruled the waves. We've all caught wind of the whispers, haven't we? Stories carried on the salty breeze by old-timers with skin like cracked leather and wide-eyed divers who've seen things. A shadow too vast to comprehend, a movement too deliberate to be anything natural. It's the kind of yarn you'd scoff at under the harsh glare of the midday sun, but one that clings to your thoughts when the moon hangs high and the tide pulls with an eerie, unsettling strength. They say there's a leviathan that never truly left, a relic so monstrous it simply couldn't have faded quietly into the annals of history. They call it the Megalodon. Now, it's easy enough to have a laugh, kick back with a cold one, and watch the gentle swell caress the rocks. But here's the thing about the Aussie outback. Whether it's the parched earth or the fathomless deep, it never reveals all its secrets. Some truths are buried so deep they're almost forgotten, while others are just too immense, too terrifying to ever truly surface. It's a land of hidden depths, and our oceans are no different, holding on to mysteries that defy our modern understanding. The Megalodon, or Otodus megalodon, if you're keen on the scientific lingo. This was a shark so utterly massive, it made our fearsome great white look like a mere minnow. Fossils tell us it patrolled the ancient oceans between 23 and 3. 6 million years ago, easily reaching lengths of 20 meters or more. That's twice the size of your average coach bus, and then some. And here's the kicker, the real head-scratcher. Its teeth, those wicked, jagged relics of a bygone era, keep turning up in Australian soil. Not just a stray one or two, mind you, but enough to map out a prehistoric predator's hunting grounds, hinting that our very own coasts once played host to these aquatic kings. And who's to say they don't still reign supreme? Because if there's one lesson this ancient land teaches you, it's that disappearance doesn't always mean death. Not in the way we humans reckon it. Sometimes things just retreat. Sometimes they simply wait. The teeth, eh? That's where the whole shebang kicks off, and where the doubt starts to creep in like a sneaky dingo in the night. See, we ain't got no bones, no full skeletons of these colossal beasts. Just these wicked, serrated echoes of something that once ruled the currents with an iron fin. In places like Beaumaris Bay or those ancient fossil beds down in southern Queensland, they lie buried deep in the sandstone, like warnings carved into the very land itself, thick as a man's palm, edges still sharp enough to slice through a tinny. Every now and then, a fresh one gets unearthed, washed up like a cryptic message from the unfathomable deep. And each time, the same question bubbles to the surface. What if? Now, the eggheads, the scientists, they'll tell you it's a simple case. Plain as day. The Megalodon, they reckon, is long gone. A goner, just another casualty of a world that kept on spinning and changing. They drone on about the oceans getting colder, about the prey populations shifting like sand dunes in a desert storm. They explain how, millions of years back, the seas started to favor the quick and nimble over the sheer brute mass. They argue that our modern-day great white, lean and mean and ruthless, outlasted the ancient Leviathan because it adapted, while the Megalodon's sheer bulk became its ultimate curse, a weight that dragged it down into oblivion. But here's a thought that keeps me up at night, staring at the Southern Cross. What if it wasn't just the chill or the gnawing hunger that did 'em in? What if the Megalodon didn't just kick the bucket, but instead it simply fell back, slipped beneath those layers of ocean we ain't brave enough, or perhaps foolish enough, to truly explore? See, the ocean's deepest, darkest places ain't dead, not by a long shot. They're quiet, yeah. Grushing, black as a moonless night and colder than a mother-in-law's kiss, but dead? Nah, mate, far from it. And this, my friends, is Australia, a land where even the shadows seem to hide teeth. Take the trench east of Fraser Island, for instance. That thing plunges for kilometers, a canyon carved by the relentless march of time and the grinding tectonics of our planet. Our fancy sonar scans have barely even scratched its abyssal floor. Down there, the light of the sun has never, ever touched. The pressure builds up like the weight of another world pressing down on you. But here's the rub. Strange, unearthly things thrive in that perpetual gloom. Bioluminescent flashes from creatures no human has ever managed to name. Movements caught on remote cameras that simply don't match anything in our neat little taxonomy charts. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? So, when a sonar ping catches something truly vast and undeniably moving, just once, mind you, a fleeting glimpse, people start to talk. When a fishing trawler limps back to port with its nets torn to shreds, not by jagged rocks, but by something slashing and deliberate, well, that's when the speculation really kicks into high gear. And when a shark carcass washes ashore, its wounds bearing a bite radius far, far too large for any known creature, that's when the whispers swell into a roaring tide. Could be a rogue white, they'll mumble, trying to sound all scientific. A freak of evolution, that one. But in hushed tones, around flickering campfires and the glow of a pub's last light, they'll whisper something else. Or maybe, he's still out there, eh? It's a thought that chills you to the bone, mate. The idea that something so ancient, so powerful, could still be lurking just beyond our sight, a ghost from the deep that refuses to stay buried. There's a pattern to these sightings if you're game enough to really look. A rhythm to the madness, like the tides obeying a moon we can't quite see, a hidden force pulling the strings. Stories bubble up along our eastern seaboard, stretching from the wild top end of Darwin all the way down to the chilly waters off Eden. They always kick off the same way, something too bloody massive to be real, something moving just beneath the surface, pushing the sea aside like a submarine without a hull, a silent, monstrous presence that leaves a wake of unease. I heard a yarn about a diver off Lord Howe Island, a tough old salt, who swore blind he saw a shadow so big it blotted out the sun. No photo, mind you, just eyes wide as saucers and a voice shaking like a leaf in a cyclone. Said it felt like being watched by something that remembered what hunger truly was. Then there was this marine biologist working with a research team near the Great Barrier Reef. He talked about sonar interference, massive irregular readings that the higher-ups just brushed off as equipment errors. He packed up his bags and left the project not long after, took up work inland, far from the ocean's mysteries. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Of course, the official reports, those dry-as-a-bone documents, they ain't got no room for legends or the shivers down your spine. Misidentification, they'll declare with a straight face. Sensationalism, pure and simple. But these waters, mate, they're ancient. And ancient waters, they hold ancient things. Sometimes I can't help but ponder if the reason we haven't found the Megalodon alive ain't because it's truly gone, but because we've forgotten how to look, how to listen to the whispers of the deep, how to read the signs that don't fit neatly into a textbook. Think about it. Those abyssal plains, where light has never dared to venture, They stretch wider than any desert you've ever seen. Creatures survive down there against all odds, defying everything we thought we knew about life. We've got the giant squid, once just a sailor's drunken fantasy, now catalogued and real as rain. There are fish that thrive on sulfur and heat, living around underwater vents like spirits from another Earth, a world alien and terrifying. So if something as grand as a megalodon had adapted, if it had followed its prey into that deeper, darker realm, would we even recognize the shape it's taken now? Maybe the megalodon that ruled the shallow seas is gone. But what if what remains is quieter, hungrier, and infinitely more patient, waiting for its moment to remind us who truly owns the deep? The ocean, mate, it never forgets, and the land, it listens. You hear these yarns most often in places where the land meets the water in a kind of sacred silence. No hordes of tourists, no blinding city lights, just the whisper of the wind, the cry of the gulls, and that slow, steady, ancient rhythm of waves caressing the rocks. It's there, in that profound quiet, that the real confessions bubble to the surface. The kind of truths that only emerge when the campfires burning low and the bottles nearly dry, when inhibitions fade and the raw, untamed spirit of the Outback takes hold. Old fishos from Broome, their faces etched with years of sun and salt, they'll spin tales about nights when the very sea seemed to change. Not just the surface, mind you, but the whole feel of it. Like something impossibly vast had glided silently underneath, shifting the very fabric of the ocean. Nets would vanish without a trace, engines would sputter and die for no earthly reason. One old bloke, his shoulders bent with the weight of countless seasons at sea, swore he once saw a tail breach the surface so high he thought it was a rogue wave until it didn't break. He said it moved with an unnerving intent, not panic, not confusion, but with a singular, terrifying purpose that spoke of ancient power. And then there are the wrecks, eh? They're not always explained away by the usual storms or human error. Some are just chalked up to tempests that never made the official record, convenient excuses for the inexplicable. Others simply vanish from radar screens without a single distress call, swallowed whole by the vast, indifferent ocean. Months later, bits of hull wash up on distant shores, bearing telltale teeth marks, clean, deep, and chillingly deliberate. Metal torn and twisted like it was nothing more than wet paper, a silent testament to a force beyond our comprehension, a predator that leaves no witnesses. But here's the rub, mate. Nothing's ever truly confirmed. No grainy footage, no irrefutable evidence, no official nod from the powers that be. Just those colossal teeth found buried deep in the dirt, silent sentinels of a bygone era. And the whispers, carried on the tide, echoing the fears of those who've glimpsed something they can't explain. The CSIRO, bless their cotton socks, they won't endorse it. The universities, they'll scoff and roll their eyes. You'd need a whole population, not just a lone survivor, they'll argue, smug in their academic towers. A breeding pair, at the very least. Genetic diversity, sustainable food sources. And on paper, they're spot on. But the ocean, mate, it doesn't play by paper rules. And not everything that survives does so in numbers. Some things just refuse to be erased. Even the great white, that feared apex predator of our modern age, still bolts in terror from unknown shapes in the water. We've tracked them, tagged and watched as they dive rapidly in a blind panic into the icy depths, fleeing from something above, something unseen. The scientists, they scratch their heads, puzzled by this inexplicable behavior. But the old fishers, they just nod slow, a knowing glint in their eyes, like they've understood it all along. Sometimes, mate, it ain't about what you can see with your own two eyes. It's about what refuses to show itself, what chooses to remain hidden, a silent, terrifying presence in the vast, dark expanse of the deep. And that, my friends, is the true mystery of the Megalodon. The ocean. She's a master of silence, a true expert. She doesn't scream, doesn't confess her deepest secrets. She just absorbs, swallowing everything whole, a perfect colossal vault for the unknown. And in that profound, ancient silence, belief thrives, not because it's been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, but because it simply endures, a stubborn whisper against the roar of scientific certainty. The Megalodon, they'll tell you, is dead and buried, extinct, a giant lost to the relentless march of time. But let me tell you, mate, the sea never signed a death certificate, and she holds onto her secrets tighter than a clam on a rock. Near the Perth Canyon, a colossal underwater scar off our west coast, strange readings have been coming back for decades. Sonar returns too massive for any known species, shapes without clear form, drifting slowly against the deep currents. Research vessels, with all their fancy gear, log it down, scratch their heads, and then move on. There's always a convenient reason, a neat little explanation. A pod of whales, a glitch in the equipment, schools of fish behaving oddly. But in the margins of those official logs, in the quiet notes of the scientists, the truth trembles, unspoken perhaps, but deeply undeniably felt, a tremor of unease that hints at something far grander and more terrifying. A few years back, a submersible, one of those unmanned probes, went missing right there. It descended on schedule, a silent sentinel exploring the abyss, and then, just like that, it vanished from telemetry. No crash alert, no sudden rise in pressure, just an eerie, absolute silence. Days later, when the backup cables were reeled in, all they found were frayed ends. Metal torn and twisted, not corroded by the salt, but ripped apart by an unimaginable force. The footage it had captured stopped with a sudden flicker, a blinding flash, and then an abrupt, terrifying darkness. No one claimed sabotage. No one blamed the currents. They just quietly, discreetly stopped the project. Because sometimes, mate, it's just easier not to ask the questions you don't want the answers to. But ask we must, eh? Not because we're hoping to stumble upon monsters, but because deep down we're hoping not to. Because knowing the truth, even if it's a hard one, is always safer than endlessly wondering. And wondering, mate, that's a beast that eats at you, gnawing at your peace of mind until there's nothing left but a gnawing uncertainty. It's the human condition, this insatiable curiosity, this need to peel back the layers of the unknown, even when what lies beneath might be more terrifying than we can possibly imagine. And here in Australia, the Aboriginal Dreamtime, that ancient tapestry of stories, speaks of sea creatures as old as the very stars themselves. Bunyips of the deep, spirits that slip effortlessly between the tides and the fabric of time. Some folks, the modern ones, they dismiss it as mere myth, folklore. But others, the wise ones, they recognize it as memory, a profound inherited truth, preserved in story long before science ever bothered to give a name to extinction. There's a deep wisdom there, in the voices that spoke before ours, a knowing not written in books, but passed down through generations, trusted and revered. So when they tell me the waters here remember, mate, I believe them, because the truth, you see, isn't always what's visible to the naked eye. Sometimes it's what looms just beyond the light, a silent, ancient presence that defies our understanding. It's in the stillness, that profound, eerie quiet, that the real fear sets in. Not the loud, sudden kind that makes you jump out of your skin, but the creeping, insidious unease that seeps into your bones when nothing stirs, when the world holds its breath. Down in those crushing depths, mate, the rules of our surface world just don't apply. Down there your senses dull, and time itself feels elastic, stretched thin like the last rays of light that never quite reach the bottom. Creatures from that alien world move without the need for sound, without the need for light, perfectly adapted to their silent, dark domain. If the Megalodon, that ancient leviathan, truly endured, that's precisely where it would wait, in the impossible folds of that eternal dark, where every beat of movement, every flicker of life must be earned with an insatiable hunger and an unnerving, profound silence. Diverse off the Ningaloo Reef, those brave souls who venture into the blue, they'll spin yarns about strange migrations, about colossal bait balls suddenly disrupted in patterns no known predator could possibly cause. It ain't about chasing, see? It's about displacing. Fish scattering in a blind panic from a presence that doesn't move like dolphins or orcas or any shark we've ever catalogued. One particularly chilling story tells of a tagged hammerhead, a 6-meter beast, an apex predator in its own right, suddenly bolting towards the shore, absolutely terrified. Its transmitter registering a massive spike in temperature, followed by an abrupt, inexplicable drop. The reading suggested it had been swallowed whole, transmitter and all, into something far warmer than the surrounding sea, something undeniably alive. And what are we supposed to make of that, eh? A glitch in the system, a faulty piece of gear, or a mouth so unbelievably vast, so perfectly adapted that it could absorb a top predator without so much as a ripple and then vanish just as quickly back into the abyss. The ocean, mate, she don't hand out second chances. If this ancient beast showed itself once, it did so because it miscalculated, made a rare error, and believe you me, it wouldn't be making that mistake again. The deep has its own lessons, and they're often learned the hard way, in the cold, unforgiving silence where no one can hear you scream. We like to puff out our chests and think we've mapped every inch of this big blue marble. But here's the cold, hard truth. Most of the ocean, nearly 80% of it, mate, remains utterly uncharted, unfelt, unseen. We know more about the dusty surface of Mars than we do about the crushing, lightless bottom of our own oceans. So when those scientists, with their fancy degrees and their lab coats, dismiss the Megalodon's survival as impossible, they do so from the comfortable decks of their research boats, from labs where the deepest pressure they feel is the Grant cycle. Meanwhile, the trench waits, silent and patient, holding on to its secrets with an iron grip. In those darkest hours just before dawn, when the sea is still as a painting, and the world hasn't yet remembered its noisy, bustling self, there are those who swear they've felt something watching. Not like a physical presence, mind you, but a knowing, something immense beneath them that understood the very shape of their body, the rhythm of their breath, a cold, ancient intelligence that predates humanity itself. Some folks, they'll just laugh it off, chalk it up to too much rum or a vivid imagination. But others, the ones who've truly felt it, they don't go back in the water. Because maybe what truly haunts us ain't just the fear of what's out there, but the terrifying possibility that we've never really left the food chain, that we're still just another meal in the grand, ancient scheme of things. Not all legends, mind you, are born from ignorance or the ramblings of a few too many tinnies. Some, the truly potent ones, they rise from the very marrow of things witnessed firsthand, but never spoken aloud, too terrifying or unbelievable to share with the uninitiated. Down in Port Lincoln, there was a captain, a tough old bloke known only as Doyle, who vanished for 2 harrowing nights during a solo run. When he finally returned, salt-eyed and pale as a ghost, he flat out refused to speak of what had transpired. But the hull of his boat, mate, it bore long parallel gouges, the kind no reef or coral could ever inflict. His catch was untouched, a strange detail that spoke volumes. He left the sea shortly after, sold his beloved vessel, and moved inland, far from the ocean's embrace. Some say he burned every nautical chart he owned, trying to erase the memory of what he'd seen. That silence, thick and heavy, almost reverent, is the true currency of both the Outback and the ocean. You learn pretty quick not to ask questions you wouldn't want the answers to, because sometimes the truth is far more unsettling than any fiction. And still, the stories drift like fog across the water. A trawler out of Albany, miles offshore, found the water around it still as glass one evening. Unnaturally so, a calm that felt more like a held breath. Then the surface shifted, not with a wave, but a slow, deliberate bulge, as if the ocean itself had inhaled something colossal. No distinct shape, no splash, just a ripple that moved against the current, and a deep, low sound that vibrated through the hull, a primal hum that didn't reach the air. Nothing else happened, but not a single soul on that trawler slept a wink that night. Those who truly know the sea, the ones who've spent their lives on her unpredictable bosom, are often the quietest. They don't waste their breath posting theories on the internet or chasing after scientific proof. They just watch. And they remember, because the cold, hard truth is this: the Megalodon might be officially extinct in the textbooks, a creature of the past, but it lives on, vibrant and terrifying, in our collective psyche. It thrives in the primal dread we feel when the water turns black beneath us, in the instinctive pause before we plunge into the vast, open sea, and in the way our minds conjure monstrous shapes in the deep without ever needing to see them with our own eyes. And Australia, this ancient continent of harsh edges and even harsher truths, has always made space for things that defy logic, things that refuse to fit neatly into our preconceived notions. Our unique creatures, they don't fit clean categories, do they? Our land itself resists taming, a wild spirit that refuses to be broken. So why then should the sea be any different? The very idea that something as magnificent and terrifying as the Megalodon could still survive here, hidden away in uncharted trenches and unknown currents, isn't just a wild dream. It's a stark reflection of how little we truly control, of how vast and unknowable the mystery still is. A humbling reminder of our place in the grand scheme of things. So perhaps the Megalodon isn't some monster reborn, a creature of nightmare returned from the abyss. Perhaps it's something far more profound, a symbol, a final defiant holdout from a time before we humans arrogantly named every shadow, before we thought we had tamed every corner of the earth. It's a powerful reminder that nature, in all its untamed glory, doesn't need our permission to remain unknown, to hold on to its deepest, darkest secrets. And that, mate, is a truth worth pondering. There are those, bless their adventurous hearts, who actively chase it, not with nets or harpoons, mind you, but with the silent hum of sonar and the profound stillness of their own conviction. A quiet sect of oceanographers, deep-sea explorers, and dreamers who don't dare call it belief, only possibility. They speak little, share even less, and venture where the maps thin out into a vast blue emptiness. Their quest isn't to prove, but to witness. To stand at the very edge of human understanding and feel the immense weight of something ancient, something older than time itself, pressing back against them, a silent challenge to our modern certainties. One such expedition, kept mostly off-record, mind you, launched from Cairns under the convenient veil of a marine biology study. The vessel, rigged with experimental hydroacoustic gear that could pick up a whisper in the abyss, ventured along a trench where whales had recently and inexplicably changed their migratory routes. For 6 long, silent days, they tracked nothing but echoes, currents, and the vast, indifferent silence of the deep. But on the 7th, their recordings captured something truly extraordinary, something vast and undeniably deliberate, passing beneath them at a depth their equipment couldn't fully penetrate. A shape moving slow, unhurried, not drifting, not feeding, just there. A silent, powerful presence in the crushing dark. The footage, what little there was reviewed, debated, archived, and then, as these things often are, buried beneath layers of scientific jargon and bureaucratic red tape. But one member of that team, an engineer, a quiet bloke with a glint in his eye, he left the team soon after. He moved to a remote coastal town where the mobile signal fades near dusk, and the locals, wise to the ways of the wild, don't ask why a man walks the shore alone, his eyes always scanning the surf, always looking, always listening. Because some truths, once glimpsed, ask not to be pursued. but to be respected, to be left to their own ancient devices. The Megalodon, if it truly survives, doesn't roar or thrash about like some B-grade movie monster. It waits. Not out of fear, mind you, but out of an ancient, profound knowledge. It has no need to show itself to a world so utterly certain of its extinction, a world that has forgotten how to truly listen to the whispers of the deep. The very idea that it might still breathe beneath us is enough to disturb the calm, enough to crack the fragile shell of certainty we so carefully wrap around ourselves, revealing the vast, terrifying unknown that lies just beneath the surface of our understanding. And maybe, just maybe, that's what truly haunts us most. Not a shark, not a monster with razor teeth, but the echo of something grand, powerful, and utterly untouchable. Something that reminds us how much of this earth remains untamed, unconquered, and profoundly mysterious. It's a humbling thought, mate, that we are not the final chapter in this planet's epic story, merely a fleeting note in the middle. The Megalodon isn't just a relic of a bygone era. It's a mirror reflecting our own fears and our insatiable desire to control the uncontrollable. And when we stare into the ocean long enough, mate, it stares right back. So, if you want to keep unraveling the wildest, most mind-bending mysteries of Australia, the ones science can't explain and that we only find in the deepest, darkest confessions, then you know what to do. Stay tuned to Outback Confessions, because we're just scratching the surface of what truly lurks out here. Don't miss the next videos, because the truth, mate, is always stranger than fiction. Until next time, and may the mysteries of the Outback continue to haunt your dreams.